Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dylan Vergara, and I'm here representing Stanford in Government as the Vice Chair of Stanford Votes. Stanford in Government is one of the oldest student organizations on campus, focusing on creating a community for service leaders dedicated to public policy. We are excited to be collaborating with SPU on this incredible event, and we can't wait to introduce our speaker. Follow us at Stanford in Gov on Instagram, or check out sig.stanford.edu to find out about more events like this.
Hi everyone, I'm Lauren Tapper from the Stanford Political Union. Thank you all for coming out on a Friday afternoon. Founded in 1953, the Stanford Political Union is a nonpartisan organization dedicated to fostering constructive dialogue on college campuses. We provide a forum for meaningful discussions about pressing issues between students and speakers with diverse viewpoints, perspectives, and experiences. Like you, we are very excited to hear from former Congressman Dan Lipinski about the current political landscape as we enter a second Trump administration. We will start with prepared remarks from Congressman Lipinski, then we will have some questions prepared for the Congressman. Then we will open up to Q&A, so have questions ready.
Congressman Dan Lipinski served 8 terms from 2005 to 2021 as a U.S. Representative for Illinois' 3rd Congressional District. As a lawmaker, he authored laws on entrepreneurship, innovation, and American manufacturing. Congressman Lipinski received degrees in mechanical engineering from Northwestern, engineering economic systems from Stanford, and his PhD in political science from Duke.
Representative Lipinski is a socially conservative Democrat and was a member of the Blue Dog Coalition, a caucus of moderate and conservative Democrats, during his congressional tenure. In the House, he chaired the subcommittee on rail, pipelines, and hazardous materials, and the Research and Technology Subcommittee. He is also a distinguished visiting fellow at the Hoover Institution. Please join us in welcoming Representative Lipinski.
Thank you. I'm pulling my phone out so I can watch the time. I used to warn people that when I was in politics, I'd say I'm a politician now, and I used to be a political science professor, and sometimes I taught 3-hour classes of grad students who wouldn't talk, and I talked for 3 hours, so I can go on for a long time. So I want to keep it short because I really want to talk about what you want to hear about and answer your questions. So thank you very much to SIG and to SPU. I know SPU is leading this, and I've heard great things. It just makes me smile at the way Stanford students create those. I think I'm walking by Tressiter. I'm like, oh, they don't call it the corner pocket anymore, the COPO, which I guess decadence is what's there now. So I was a long time ago now, I hate to think about it, 89. I was there the school year 88, 89. Got my master's in engineering economic systems. I was an engineer. It's actually in management sciences and engineering now. That's what it's in. That's what it was folded into that. But then I went on to get a PhD in political science because I love government and politics. I decided to want to teach. I thought if I'm going to teach, I should do what I really love. And I love politics, and I love this country. That really motivated me. My father was in politics before me. I taught for a few years, moved back to Chicago, ran for Congress, and was there for 16 years until I lost the Democratic primary in 2020 because the progressives came after me in 18. I nearly won, and I lost in 2020. What I'm doing now, besides being a fellow at Hoover, I'm also doing some teaching. I'm a fellow at University of Dallas. I live in Chicago. So I'm really right now spend a lot of time. I'm working on writing a book about my experiences, but more about the divide in the country. And people talk about, say, we have tribalism now in this country. In what it's really more akin to is sectarianism. We essentially have partisanship for many people. Their political affiliation has become a fundamentalist pseudo-religious identity. It used to be that it was party label was for organizing elections, organizing elected officials. once they're in office. But now it's become more akin to make people as a social identity. And what this means is that people are sort of almost forced into, they're told, the way I see it, Americans are told you need to join one of these two, pseudo-religious sects and adopt all the positions that they have. You need to, some things that we've sort of wiped out, have certainty about, okay, you know where you stand, these are the issues that you stand on. It's also helped to wipe out, I think, humility in, questioning, what do I really believe? I'm just following a group, and I'm supposed to follow that group. I need to follow that group. I essentially, this was a headline of a story when I was had a primary challenge that I was talking about, and I was labeled a heretic and a party heretic, and that's essentially the way things have come to be in our political system. The parties see themselves, that partisanship is seen this way. Our country cannot survive this. Our republic cannot survive this way. The Constitution was written in a way to try to force debate, deliberation, and so people would come to representatives would come to compromise, and so that you had some kind of conciliation, figuring out how are we going to live together in this very diverse country. It was diverse relative to other countries, very diverse when the country was founded. It's even much more diverse now. And so that makes it much more important that we have real debate, deliberation, working together, not giving up what we believe in, but understanding we need to live together, figure out how we're going to do this. There is almost no dialogue in politics anymore. It's, I know the answer, this is the right answer, I'm 100% certain, the other side is wrong. If someone gets elected and they say, well, I couldn't fix it because the evil other side wouldn't let me do it. But you elect me again, and yeah, I'll get it done. It's sort of a utopian vision almost that both sides have. Oh, everything's easy, and I'm going to solve that. That's not, the framers of the Constitution understood, first of all, people need to come together and talk and figure out come to some conclusion on the best solution that we can live with. And so I think that's why it's so important what SPRU is doing. And I know SIG, the idea that, one thing we can thank Donald Trump for maybe, about 10 years ago, there was a real lack of interest in politics. My friends who were teaching said political science, was kind of, students aren't interested in political science anymore. They're not interested in government anymore. But I think because of, unfortunately, how bad things have become, I think there's more of an interest in it. But we need all of you. You're at Stanford. You're all really smart. You're smarter than I am. I didn't go here undergrad. I probably couldn't have gotten in. But you have resources here, and you are in a position, however you look at it, if you feel you're blessed, you're lucky, you're fortunate to have the opportunity that you have. And we need people to be leaders in changing the way that our politics works, our society works, and how we get along together. We need leaders to do that. And you'll never understand how much influence you have on other people. It's something we all like to think we're all very independent. We all look to others and take cues from others. And that's one of the big concerns right now about politics. What you have seen in your lifetimes, essentially, when you've been paying attention to politics, this is not the way things have been. This is different. right? And things can be different, and they need to be different because at some point, the Republic's going to fail. A representative democracy is going to fail. In my view, if we keep giving more power to the president, no matter who, this is not a Donald Trump thing, this is both sides. Congress needs to work. People need to represent their constituents. And that's what it should be about, and that's how lawmaking should work. That's how federal government should operate, not looking to the president to, solve all problems. The president is, we don't have a king. That's not the way things are supposed to be. So I will stop there and look forward to your questions.
Well, thank you, Congressman. I think that's an excellent segue into our first topic, which is Trump's second term. With him being inaugurated on Monday, I think everybody is focused primarily on what is going to happen to our political landscape. And so how do you anticipate Donald Trump's second term will shape our current political landscape and our country as a whole?
Well, I can't believe it was only Monday when he was inaugurated, because he's done so much in that time, and there's probably a lot I've missed today because I haven't seen anything for the last few hours. I think there's a lot of uncertainty about what he was going to really do when he got in there. Everyone knew that the war in Ukraine was not going to end on the first day, as he said it was, that prices were not going to come down. And he, unfortunately, in my eyes, I think Biden went out on a terrible note with some of those pardons. I think that was really awful. Donald Trump coming in, pardoning everyone. I mean, even the vice president said beforehand that he didn't think it was right to pardon people who had attacked police officers. Just starting out with that, it is greatly concerning to me. And what concerns me more than anything is that you don't hear Republicans being willing to stand up and speak out and say this is wrong. You find very few who are willing to do that. Now, I am hopeful that I don't think there's going to be mass deportations. That's going to be that'd be very unpopular. It's hard to even know what's going on right now. I think the administration is publicizing things, the deportations are going on now. I can't really comment on them, but it seems like I heard someone's comment yesterday that this isn't anything out of the ordinary. It's just that Trump is publicizing these, what's going on, going after criminals. I don't think there's going to be mass deportations. And I think that people are going to respond. And the response has been very different this time. 8 years ago, it was immediately, there was the movement, the resistance. I think that was a mistake to so forcefully come out against President Trump right from the beginning last time. I think it's good that there's sort of been taking a step back. Don't fall for responding to every single thing that the president tweets out. I think that's playing his game. I think there's some things that I agree with Donald Trump on, but I think he's been terrible for modeling what a politician should be, what a president should be, what a human being should be, and that really bothers me. I think Congress is going to be able to do very, very little. Having been there, with the narrow majorities that the Republicans have, especially in the House, a 2-seat majority right now, with 3 seats in the Senate, I think the Republicans can't even agree on their big ticket items that they want to get done, even how they're going to do them. 1 bill, 2 bills, 3 bills. I don't think they're going to be able to do much. And the bad part about that is then it's all going to be focused again on the president. We can't be looking to the president to do everything and to be the government and just to be our leader. That's not how a representative democracy is supposed to work. So I have concerns. I think something that someone said to me, which I hadn't really thought about, which seems very obvious, that I should have thought about. The reason if you're concerned about Donald Trump and Donald Trump becoming a true authoritarian, that will only happen if he's more popular. He's not going to do that in a 50-50 country. He's not going to be able to do that. The danger is for Trump or any other president to really I think they've overstepped the Constitution already. Trump, other presidents, I think Biden did, I think Obama did. I hate to compare anyone to what Trump's done. I'm not saying they're the same. But the only way that someone's really going to become authoritarian is if they're popular. They get maybe up to 60%. And so that's really the time to be concerned if that happens in a president. You have a president who wants to take that kind of power. So that's something to remember and to think about. But we need to all, speak out smartly. I think focus on policy. I think that's really critical. When the policies come out and bad policies and bad things that you think the president has done something bad, if you think the president has done something good, don't be afraid to admit it. I mean, that's how, some of you may. I mean, I have a lot of friends who are big supporters of President Trump, and they're good people, and I just disagree with them. So that's a long answer. Where is it going? We don't know, and we're 4 days in, so it's hard to know. I just don't think things are going to slow down a lot. Trump is trying to set this up as, I got all these things done very quickly. He's not going to be able to keep it up. In terms of actions, the rhetoric, I assume, will just keep coming out. But I don't think the actions, there's only so much he could do. But we'll see what he does with the bureaucracy, with federal employees. So I'll stop there.
Considering what you're saying about Congress not being able to be productive, how do you think Democrats should approach working with the Trump administration during the next 4 years?
I think they've been smarter so far than 8 years ago, and because if you just come out and say, and again, this is about dialogue and being willing to work together where you can. I think that's really important no matter who the president is. He's president, he's been elected. I grew up learning politics is the game of addition. To do anything in politics, not just to get elected, but if you're in the legislature, if you're in an executive position, you need to work with the legislature, you need to gather people together to support what you're interested in doing. It's not supposed to be about dividing, pushing people away. It's supposed to be bringing people together. I think that it's be smart to, and people will see, hopefully, and this will maybe model the way things should be. If there are good things if you're a Democrat and there's something that the president does that you think is good, it's a good policy, you should work with them. If you think it's something bad, then you should fight against that, try to stop it, try to see where you can come to compromise on. It's really hard with President Trump, but try to do that because I think then the people who are sort of in the middle will take you more seriously. If they just see you throwing up roadblocks, then they're going to think, well, you're not really serious about getting anything done. That's so far so good. It's only been a few days. I don't know the direction the Democratic Party is going to go. I think they have to figure out where the party is at, what has gone wrong, in terms of this election and start moving forward. But it's really hard when you don't have a clear leader of the party. That's really hard to do.
And shifting gears to our next topic is actually about the future of the Democratic Party. We were wondering, what do you think is next for the Democratic Party after the big losses in November? But more importantly, what role do you think socially conservative or blue dog Democrats should play in shaping the party's future platform and policies?
I think the party has to get back to being more inclusive, being more of a big tent party. The party used to be much more of a big tent party. And hey, look, I'm pro-life. There's almost no pro-life Democrats left. There are a few. I never expected that the party was going to become pro-life. It's a pro-choice party. I was in it for other reasons. But for many years, I was accepted as part of the party, and then it got to a point where it was unacceptable. And I think any political party who's pushing people out, I don't think that's a good thing. I mean, again, politics is supposed to be a game of addition, and so I don't think that I wish the party would be more welcoming and inclusive. I'll just leave it at that. The party is going to be what it is. I think to some extent some people got tired of feeling like the Democratic Party is just too rigid in telling people you have to think this, believe this, and I think it needs to. I think that's been a problem, been an issue, and the party needs to figure out how it's going to address that. I mean, both parties are, I think, pulled to the extremes, and that's bad for the country.
I'm going a little bit off script here, but I think you brought up a great point about inclusivity. And we saw in the recent election that Democrats lost a significant number of minority votes or of youth votes. And I think that points to the exclusive point that you're making. Why do you think that Democrats are losing so many of those young or minority votes, especially when it seems to be this inclusive party for minorities or for people whose voices aren't normally represented in the Republican Party?
I want to turn the question back on all of you in a minute. You need to tell me why what's happening with young voters. I mean, I have my limited experience with my nephews, and I hear what they say, and I think they both voted for Donald Trump. I think the issue. And I've seen this coming for a while because my district, there are a lot of Mexican American in my district, and they are. I think some of them are turned off because they're more socially conservative. They're more focused on family and religion. They're immigrants, or they're first generation or second generation, and my sense is some have a sense that that the Democratic Party is saying that the American dream is not possible anymore. And they have come here, they've worked really hard, feel that they're living the American dream. And it reminds me of growing up on the southwest side of Chicago. I'm of Polish ancestry and Irish, second generation Polish. A lot of people who are like me and really just believed in America and living the American dream, and parents working hard, send their kids to school. The kids are gonna do better, and I think that, and I could be wrong about this, but I think there's a sense amongst more recent immigrants now who feel like, the Democratic Party is saying, there is no American dream, or you don't. They're not. They feel they're hearing more from the Republican Party. you work hard and you play by the rules, you're going to succeed, and your families are going to, your children are going to have it better. And the Democratic Party hasn't had that. They're not hearing that message from Democrats. And so I think that's an issue. I'm still waiting to see what the numbers are amongst black voters, because I've heard different numbers. Black men voted more for Trump this time than last time. It's still over, but I've heard different numbers from different people, so it's hard to know. I think something. I was at I'm here for an event at the Hoover Institution with pollsters, and we had this event yesterday, and they were saying that the gender gap was big. All right, women voted +8 for Harris, and men voted +12 for Trump. But that's not bigger than Trump-Biden 4 years ago. And there was this expectation that it was going to be bigger, and it wasn't, because there's so much focus on Harris appealing to women, Trump appealing to men. So I'm still trying to figure that one out. It wasn't bigger. That's hard to believe. But they came from that. It seemed like people were saying black men were maybe more went for Trump this time than before. And I think, again, it's a whole idea of working hard. Entrepreneurship, that's another thing that sort of has taken off a little bit more with Republicans, this idea of being entrepreneurs, which should resonate here a lot. Unfortunately, there's also the part there. I really didn't like the toxic bros, as far as I'm concerned, that Trump was appealing to. That bothered me for my own, for how I view the world and the way things should be. And I think, and I hate to use the term toxic masculinity, because I think it's been overused, used wrongly in some ways. But I think there certainly was some of that, which also, again, it was a way that Trump appealed to men across all, white, every race, ethnicity.
And finally, we want to go to the issue of bipartisanship. And so a more philosophical question. You gave a talk a while back arguing that to overcome the deepening partisan divides, the U.S. needs a renewal of civic patriotic devotion to the country's founding principles. What would this renewal look like to you?
We are a country that was unique and not founded on particular race, ethnicity, religion. We're a propositional nation. Declaration of Independence, all men are created equal, endowed by the Creator with inalienable rights. Amongst these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. It's an idea in democratic governance, also in there. And then we have the Constitution, which said this is the way we are going to, this is the type of representative democracy that we are going to have. Again, they thought about what do we need to do to try to force a diverse people to work together, to figure out how to live together. We need to come back to that. I mean, I love this country because of what it stands for, what it was founded upon. We need to go back and put that at the top of if you are an American, if you're not American, if you're here at Stanford, you're not American. I just think America has been, despite all problems which every country has, every peoples have, has been a real beacon in many ways for the world. And we need to get back to those principles of the Declaration, and that's the only thing that's going to keep us together instead of fracturing apart. And if we follow the Constitution, there's a great book called American Covenant by Yuval Levin. It's about how subtitle is something like how the Constitution once brought us together and how it can again. And he goes through what I'm talking about, the Constitution, the way it was written, the genius of it, trying to force us to figure out how we are going to be we the people, as the preamble of the Constitution starts out. And so I think we need to get back to that, remember why this country exists in the first place. And if we don't, we're going to split apart, and we're not going to figure out how we're going to continue this, at least not as a republic.
And I just want to ask just one final follow-up question here. What advice would you give to students just like us and young activists hoping to work toward unity in such a polarized political environment?
It's really, really, really hard. And I love that you are trying to do it. What you need to do is get involved. You need to model for others dialogue. I think people don't understand that you have to be able to speak with people who you disagree with. You disagree with strongly on issues. I mean, you have to figure out where you're going to find common ground, and that's where, going back to the Declaration, I mean, that's our common ground. What does it mean, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness? We need to have the discussion and figure out what does that mean for us now, today. What is this going to mean for our society, for our laws? That's a debate to have, and we need to be willing to do that. It's just so hard now. One thing that, because we're so polarized, and what I found in Congress is there are some issues that Democrats, Republicans are never going to agree upon. Okay? There's a lot of issues that there can be common ground. You can find common ground on. But every issue seemed to become a partisan issue. And one side would go one way, and the other would just go the other way on an issue where it should not be. There was not really a deep ideological difference. It was just like, oh, we need to figure out how to make this, a wedge issue against the other side, or how do we? That was one of the worst things. It just amazed me how more and more issues like, oh, wait, that didn't used to be a partisan issue. No, now it's a partisan issue. I was on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, building roads. It's always like, oh, used to be a line, oh, there's no such thing as a Democratic bridge or a Republican bridge. It's all infrastructure. And it's like, well, that all became. Politicians found a way, both sides found a way to make every issue a partisan issue, and that's just ridiculous. And so there are things to find common ground on, even with people, I think, that you have strong disagreements on certain issues. There's other things you can come to agreement on. And I just truly believe that we need to get back to that, and you need to figure out how you're going to do that. And be committed to living it. You have such a great opportunity. And it's not easy. That's the other thing. Look, everyone's got to make a living. I understand that. But also, at some point, you've got to be willing to sacrifice for something greater. And I think for the good of the country is a greater good, because I think that's working for others. You got to be willing to. I was willing to lose my position as a congressman, which I love doing, but I was going to stand up for what I believed in, and I did, and I lost. I have no regrets about it whatsoever, but we all have to be willing to not go for every. I see so many people, I got to go for every last dollar. It doesn't matter. People just sell out, and you've got to sometimes be uncomfortable. It's worth it. So we got to be willing to make sacrifices, and it's not easy. It's not easy to change our politics, our culture, but someone's got to do it, and you you all probably know, you think about in history people who have done this, who might be a special hero to you, and that's what you got to remember and think about. And you can be that person.
Thank you. Such wise words. I think let's open it up to the audience. Does anyone have any questions?
It's interesting. It's sort of a rough, I guess it's sort of a rough explanation of, I guess, history, I suppose. But I've heard the description that, for example, like the hippies in the 1960s, you know, there are all these young kids and whatnot. And as the 80s come around, they sort of shift and become more conservative, and then you have the Reagan era. You know, there's always these cycles with politics. There's sort of one leaning, you know, there's sort of the certain predominant leanings in culture in the 1960s and 70s perhaps, and then it sort of shifts in the 80s. Do you think that there is a shift of that nature occurring now perhaps, where things are going in a more conservative direction versus previously? Any comments on that? If that is the case?
I think we're somewhat going in a more conservative direction, but again, it all depends on how you define these terms. I wish I was talking to someone yesterday, and I said, I'm born in 1966. So I lived through late 60s, early 70s. I don't have a recollection of that. We went through some really tough times then in this country, and we somehow came back together. And I don't really have a good sense of how that actually happened. I just am concerned that, there's always these cycles going on, and but I'm concerned that we have lost this sense of unity.
So maybe you ought to just not even say conservative or Democrat or any of those terms. Maybe just be an independent thinker. Might be
Yes.
best.
I mean, I lost the 2020 primary. The Republicans asked me to run in 2022 in the district, and if I could have won the Republican primary, I don't know if I could have. I voted to impeach Donald Trump the first time. It was the only time he was up for impeachment when I was there. But I said, I don't want to go. I'm too much of an independent thinker now to be in politics in general, with the expectation, at least especially in Congress, where you're expected, you just got to follow along. I was like, I just can't do that. It's just not in me to do that. I have better things and more productive things to do in life rather than to be I used to say, I don't know what the proper animal to use is. It's not, I don't want to be offensive in any way. I'll say a trained seal. I don't think a seal is, anyway. A trained seal could be a member of Congress if you could teach them how to put the card in the box and hit the red button or the green button to vote yes or no. Because essentially you could do that. If you were a member of Congress, you could, okay, what does the party tell me I should do now? Okay, that's how I'll vote. That just kills me. I just can't do that. I can't do that. And I think you all are probably of at least somewhat of that kind of, you wouldn't be here probably if you weren't. Because if you're smart, and you've got to see nuance and understand things aren't simple. They're complex. Solutions are complex. And none of us have all the answers. And again, getting back to we have to have humility that we don't know everything. And you just don't see that anywhere. You can't admit that you don't know anything. When I was in politics, it's like I felt like people expected me to know everything and have an answer for everything and be, have a definitive answer on climate change. There's certain things I supported and certain bills that I introduced that was like a small piece to make change, and that's what I focused on doing. Having a big solution, well, I guess I helped introduce a bill, have a carbon tax. I guess it's a bigger solution. I didn't think it was really going to happen. I mean, I didn't tell people I'm going to go and fix this problem that, you elected me and this problem will be fixed, because I knew it wasn't going to happen. And I just feel politicians are always telling us, I'm going to fix that, no problem, it's easy, and it doesn't happen. And that's why people get then frustrated about it. So, all right, I'll stop on going on that way. Yeah, but in the back, and then.
Okay, thank you for presenting to us today. I was wondering, is there any room for curiosity and uncertainty in politics today? And if not, how could we as like a Stanford community and the broader public change that?
Curiosity in terms of?
I would say, I think, but maybe more of like being a little bit like fluid or like exploratory with our views and perspectives.
You certainly should be, and I'm saying it's sort of not accepted now. I am constantly questioning everything, and I don't have part of this is my personality. Part of it, I was trained as an academic, and academics are taught to, you got to dive in, and you've got to study everything. You've got to make sure you have everything right. When before you come to your conclusion and put out your research and try to publish your research. And so I question everything. And I think my personality is also that if people have a different opinion, a different thought, I actually stop and think about it. And I think we all should be that way, but it's sort of drilled into us that we're not supposed to be that way. You have to have enough confidence in yourself to question yourself, to be willing to listen to other people, talk to other people that you disagree with, even strong disagreements, and don't come back just to hit them over the head. Really think about where they're coming from. Because my issue positions on some things were not in line with most of my Democratic colleagues, I was challenged all the time, but that helped me. And so, there needs to be more room for curiosity. I'm curious about everything. A big part for me, I'm Catholic. My Catholic faith is very important to me. I see my Catholic faith is supporting the best ideals of America and our democratic republic. But I consider myself a very Orthodox Catholic. I question things all the time, and it's something that I study my faith all the time and try to understand it better. Everything. So we should all, and again, you're all Stanford students, you should all be understanding that things are complex, and you're all so smart that you should understand and let yourself question things. It's not that you never come to a conclusion, never come to a belief, but keep questioning and be open to changing your mind. Yeah.
This is related to your comments earlier. I'm curious to know, during your time in Congress, what were some of the committees that were very successful in achieving bipartisanship that, as you continued serving in Congress, you noticed that there was a growing division?
The two committees I served on were the Transportation Committee and the Science, Space, and Technology Committee. One of the reasons I got on those, I had to be on transportation essentially for my district. I had Midway Airport in my district. Transportation is very important. But it was a committee that was always known as being a very bipartisan committee. Members work together. It just got more, even on that committee, things got partisan, and you found things to sort of have problems on. Spending got to be, problem. What are you going to do? Where are you going to get the money from? That's always a problem, an issue, but it just got to be more of of an issue. And it's like, oh, because it's easy to attack the other side if they want to raise some taxes because you need to pay for something, you raise a fee because you need to pay for a road. The Science, Space, and Technology Committee, again, that was a fairly bipartisan committee when I got there. Then climate change very quickly became a big issue, and that just split that just made it so much harder. I had a friend, a Republican from South Carolina who I became good friends with. He lost his primary in 2010. He was a conservative guy, but he said in 2010, climate change is real and we should do something about it. And he said, the reaction he got from his very conservative constituents was, he said he felt like it's an article of faith for them. They're Republicans, so they have to not believe in climate change. And he believed in climate change, so he can't be a Republican, so we got to get rid of him. So that became much more divisive. And it wasn't even when I started in 2005, 2006, and that was a committee that worked well together. But so many things become more, the Judiciary Committee was always a very partisan and divided committee because the issues that they would deal with were much more difficult and divide the parties. But that was my experience on those committees. Yes.
Congressman, thank you for being here. I was curious what the biggest challenge or problem you had to face in your time in office was and how you went about solving it. Because I think in today's world there are problems everywhere, and oftentimes, as you said, they're very complex and nuanced, and it's really about the toolkit and strategies we have and use. So I'm curious how you went about doing that.
Are you talking about a policy?
Question or sort of any major challenge in office. It can be policy or it can just be something else.
I'm trying to think of what would be the best example and what, because there's different ways I can answer this question. Different ways I can take this. I had I wish I would have written this up. I was going to write it up and never publish it and never did. I had an idea that let me go down a different road. I was in something called the House Problem Solvers Caucus, a bipartisan group of members, Democrats, Republicans. We tried to keep it even the whole time. It was usually about 20 Democrats, 20 Republicans. We worked on issues. We tried to come together on issues. This was especially active in 2017, 18, 19. The first year of President Trump, in his first term, I had more outreach from the White House than any other of the 16 years I was there, from any other presidential administration. There were people in the Trump White House who were coming to Capitol Hill to talk to members and talk to Democratic members and invite Democratic members to the White House to talk about issues like an infrastructure bill. We worked on, and this wasn't something with the tax bill. Work with Republicans on a tax bill, and then all of a sudden they decided they were just going to go and do it themselves, and they weren't going to bother anymore with Democrats on that. But the Problem Solvers Caucus, when Republicans tried to repeal the Affordable Care Act, that failed. We said we need to be ready to step in with something that is bipartisan, that there were some issues with the Affordable Care Act that we thought there's bipartisan agreement that we can make changes. And we came together and we negotiated and said, okay, this is some things Democrats more support, but some Republicans do. Here's some things Republicans more support, but some Democrats do. And we put this bill together. But it's just so hard because then the Speaker of the House at that time, the Republican, the Speaker doesn't want a group of members, who aren't, they want to run the place. The Speaker of the House wants to run the place. They don't want this bipartisan, bill to come out from, his group of, group of members, mostly kind of backbench members, not coming from the committee leaders. But we sat down, and I enjoyed it so much. We actually sat down and negotiated. Then immigration was an issue. At one point, President Trump said he was having dinner with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, at the White House. At that time, they were both the Democrats were in the minority in both the House and the Senate. I think the Senate also. So Trump says to them, all right, let's do a deal on DACA for the Dreamers. So those people who were brought to this country when they were minors from another country, illegally entered the country, to give them at least a legal residence, not a pathway to citizenship. So Trump said he was going to do it. And so a group of us got together, Democrats, Republicans, the House Problem Solvers Caucus, said, okay, what can we come to an agreement on? So we need to have something that's some border security, and then how are we going to, is it going to be citizenship that is going to be offered, or is it going to just be legal residence, permanent legal residence? What do you need to do to qualify for it? And we sat down and we worked through and negotiated, and back and forth on. And of course, we didn't have the opportunity to bring it forward. We actually got a more complicated story that Trump had actually agreed to something. It wasn't with us. It was with the Republican Speaker of the House at the time. And there was actually going to be a somewhat comprehensive immigration reform bill that Trump agreed to. And then supposedly some people, it was the Republican Speaker who told me this a couple months ago. Some people, some of Trump's advisors came up to him and said, you can't do this because your base will go crazy. Your most ardent supporters will go crazy if you do this, and you can't do it. And Trump backed out of it. But I mean, that was, I thought for working on those two issues, on immigration, on something on health care, this is what Congress is supposed to be doing. It's supposed to be sitting down, figuring out what can we come to an agreement on, and we each compromise from what our ideal position is, but we both get something that we think is important and we can agree on. And so we tried to do that, and there needs to be more of that. Needs to be the way. That's the way Congress is supposed to work. So, all right, I'll shut up. Yes.
So continuing on the topic of partisan divide, on Monday, we expect to hear from Andrew Yang, who's taking a third-party approach. And with your work across the aisle, how do you think the third party can really ingrain itself into the American system, and what obstacles might they face in the way?
It is so hard. I almost ran as an independent for Congress in 2022. It's just incredibly difficult. Fundraising is incredibly difficult. Getting on the ballot is difficult. In order to get on the ballot at that time, in Illinois, because each state has their own ballot access rules, if you're a Republican, want to run a Republican primary, Democrat want to run a Democratic primary, you need to get 400 signatures of voters in the district. If you're an independent, you needed to get 5,000 signatures to get onto the ballot. There's all kinds of ways that it's set up to block third parties, to make it much more difficult. I was very hopeful. This organization called No Labels was talking about running a candidate for president, and this was a perfect opportunity with Trump and Biden running, and so many people who were unhappy with both candidates. I mean, when Biden was still in there, and they raised a lot of money. They were getting ballot access. They raised enough money to hire people to get signatures on petitions to qualify for the ballot in a lot of states. I don't know how many they got up to. And then they got to a point where they didn't have a candidate yet, and they said, and I had told them back in 2023, you need to get a candidate now. You can't wait until April of 2024, which was their plan, they waited, and they got to a point where they said, okay, we're not going to do this. We can't find a candidate. And part of that was they should have done it earlier. But the difficulty is if you are especially a young politician, if you ran as an independent for president, you have no future with either party, most likely. The party's going to say no, because both parties would have really been against you for being look, when I was talking about running as an independent for Congress, I had my former Democratic colleagues calling me up and saying, you can't do this. You're going to hurt the Democrat. The Republican's going to win. If you run as an independent, don't do this. I had a Republican friend say to me, the Republicans ran because I was like, well, I'm looking for support. This guy had told me originally, maybe I could help get you some support. And then he said, oh, the Republicans ran a poll and they found that their candidate has absolutely no chance of winning if you run in this district. I was like, it can't be true that both sides would be hurt if I ran, unless I won. But they're both saying, oh, if you run, the other side's going to win. I was like, you can't both be right. But the thing was that they're begging me not to run. Now, it didn't matter to me because I don't plan to go back in the Democratic Party. I don't plan to go in the Republican Party. I still call myself a Democrat because I'm not a Republican. I support independence. I love to see independence succeed, but it's just so hard to do. It's possible for president if you had a lot of money behind it, and you had two unpopular presidential candidates, that there's a chance for that. But it's so hard running for Congress to do that. All right, there's more questions, and we're out of time, right? You're gonna.
Yeah, unfortunately, we were out of time. But if you have any more questions for the congressman,
I'll be here.
yeah.
I guess this ends the formal part, but yes, I'll hang around for a little bit.
The congressman will be
Thank you
able
so
to-
much.
Thank you.